Hey everybody, welcome to iScoop. It's me and Bash here. As always, Cobell behind the screen. He'll chime in if he feels like it. Bash, you got anything you want to lead with?
I don't have any opening thoughts today.
No opening thoughts?
I do have a beer.
What's the beer?
The beer is American Nuggets Finale.
That looks like the same font they use for Fruity Pebbles. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. So 450 North is down in Columbus, Indiana.
And if you wanted to sponsor us, we would not be mad.
Yeah, for real.
Even if it was just throwing us some beer. Like, it's expensive.
And if you're just a viewer and you happen to live near Columbus, or own some 450 North beers and want to send them to us.
Or if you brew yourself.
Or if you brew your own beer, that would be great as well. Actually, that'd be even better.
Yeah.
Yeah, send us some beers that we can't just go buy.
Yeah, DM us.
We'll say your name on the internet.
Which is where you want your name to be, in front of all the strangers.
Better believe it. So 450 North makes unbelievable IPAs, and then these weird slushy things that that they're more popular for, that I go back and forth between like loving and not caring about. But here we go. It's a nice hazy. Normally, American Nuggets is a double IPA. This time it is a triple.
Oh, God. There's a lot to that.
Yeah.
This is good.
That is a hop bomb. Mosaic, Idaho 7, Citra, and Simcoe hops in it. Triple dry hopped.
Like, I get a cream ale vibe from it.
Yeah.
But more cream than ale.
That comes from the New England style, and I'm not sure what is different about that from other IPAs in terms of the brewing. But what it does is it makes that kind of that hazy look. The Guggenhaus beer that we drank, a lot of these 450s, I'm really into it right now. It's got kind of a juicy, and you're right, it's very creamy, but I feel like it's the hops that makes it creamy. It's like a creamy orange juice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like you're drinking like flavored milk. It's like somehow all of that citrus and hoppy notes are just creating this thick, rich.
I heard there was a new orange creamsicle alcohol beer.
Oh God.
That is killing it.
Is it the Sun King?
I think it is.
Yeah, I've had that. Tastes like a creamsicle.
Yeah, I've heard that it's doing great things.
A lot of beer is getting fruity right now,
which is hilarious.
Oh, so I used to be
I don't drink them girly drinks.
Yeah, I used to be a big beer guy, and I used to have a cellar, and instead of the real hoppy beers, I was into like darker beers, and I would age them. And anyway, I left to do barbecue, and when you're sitting out in the sun for 16 hours, you drink Coors Light. And so I got out of beer, and I'm just now getting back into it, and it is funny. Because my best beer friend is he looks like a bodybuilder. He could enter a competition at any time, bald head, big, tough, drives a motorcycle, drives a souped-up golf cart. He's got a truck, and it's like, yeah, you gotta try this slushy style beer. It's like a milkshake with a dick in it. And it's like, all right.
Yeah.
I remember when...
Gotta get that protein in, doesn't matter where it comes from.
I remember when beer was bitter, but, that's great. It's good to... Also, another fun thing about it is the artwork on so many beer bottles and cans now.
Is that the Black Cat?
We're looking into the future there. We're not going to... We'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
But it's all very colorful. It's a really kind of exciting and fun new direction for beer.
Yes. Well, so I wonder, this is something I was thinking about the other day, how much of it is because of vaping? Now, my whole life growing up, I've heard, you don't drink that girly shit and drink like hard whiskey because it's masculine if it tastes like shit. Anyway, you go down the street on any fucking city, you see some hard-ass motherfuckers sitting at the corner all sloped up on the side of a building smelling like fucking strawberry sherbet.
Yeah. I wonder if it has more to do with ubiquitous sugar now.
Oh, well, maybe.
I mean, your meat has high fructose corn syrup in it now.
As Richard Garfield intended.
As Richard Garfield intended. Just the way Richard Garfield... Hey, can we get, as Richard Garfield intended, posted on this screen? I sent Corey and Kelly a picture of a game that I played on Arena. It was historic. I was playing Tribal Angels against someone who was playing Tribal Angels.
The board state's awful.
It is.
It really is.
Corey, if you could put that image here.
Yeah, just throw that up there.
Or don't.
They probably won't be able to process what's going on.
Oh, no. You could put image not available. You could try, Corey. You could try.
Just put a picture of your own butt, Corey.
Image overloaded.
Yes.
It is, I had thousands of life. My opponent had thousands of life. The way that the game played out is... And I knew he was doing the same thing because, first of all, the timer broke on Arena. Like, he had a Heliod in play. And the whole point of this deck is that it auto-generates these angel tokens, which causes all four of both of our, who's the healer lady who gives you life when someone comes into play?
No, I don't know.
Doesn't matter. Every time a creature comes into play, we both gain life, and every time a creature comes into play, we both gain life from our Bishop of Wings. And then he has Heliod that says every time you gain life, which was upwards of 60 per turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So what he was doing is he would just turn off his game, let it time out, and it would auto-place his Heliod things. But because there were so many triggered abilities on the stack with all these angels being created, all these creatures reacting to the angels being created, all these other creatures saying, oh, you gained life, let's create some more angels. What would happen is I would take my turn. I'd have priority for about 1.5 minutes. And then at the end of the attack phase, and then again at the end of the turn, there would be 40 minutes of the game auto-processing all of these triggered abilities. Somehow, we met up at the end. His name was it Volumes? I think it was Volumes. I spent 7 hours with the guy. At the end, we both showed up, and I had eaten through my entire deck. I had some Realm Walkers, so I was able to play Angels off the top of my library. And I dug down. I had so many literal hours of triggered events going on that I could just look at what was left in my deck that had been thrown there by a couple of collected companies. And I was just counting down to this Ajani of the Pride. And so finally, 6 cards out. I had been saving a collected company. Boom, I play it. Next card is a Johnny. I turn off my phone for an hour. I turn it back on. The triggered effects are over. I throw a Johnny down. A Johnny has the ability that if you have more than 15 life above your original life total, then he can exile all of your opponent's creatures. I put it on the stack. Volumes showed up for the last minute. And he sent me good game. And he was right.
Which brings us to our topic today. Are certain decks just face rolls?
Autopilot. Mono red, the classic like shit on autopilot deck. You play
Mono red Goblin aggro?
Yeah, you just play cards and then you play Embercleave. And that's it. And then you feel like you're a good Magic player even though you're a dipshit. Is that actually true? Or are you really playing cards? Because it's kind of hard to call someone stupid when their win rate is that high.
Yeah. On
the other hand, certainly in a game as complex as Magic, it's easy to look down on a deck where you really do just throw down your 1-drops and then throw down Embercleave. And it doesn't matter what your opponent did.
It reminds me of Mike Tyson's quote, "Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face." Oh yeah, you got a combo, that's fine, but you've got 4 turns to do it, buddy.
Yeah.
I'm coming at you with everything.
Right. Well, I think before even getting into the question of is it autopilot, is it weak, is it strong, is it intelligent, is it not, I think it plays a very important role in that. You know, they always say the aggro keeps the control decks honest.
Oh, I mean, cool.
I mean, well, it's like that Justice League remake. Everyone's like, oh, it's so good. It's only 6 hours long and this and that. And it's like, well, yeah, anybody who's got 6 hours.
The Snyder one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still shit. But compared to the Whedon cut that was in theaters,
But it was better than.
it's better than that.
It's shit in italic font.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's shite.
It's shite.
Nice
But it's
one.
not all caps. The original one, or the Whedon cut, was all caps.
Yeah, it was all caps. Shit. This was just
Martha!
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
No, that was
just shit.
the Superman.
Oh, yeah, my bad.
So-
Justice League.
Well, but the thing is, okay, so if you have whatever it is, 4 hours to tell your story, and you have a captive audience who's going to pay attention for the whole 4 hours, well,
Skip critical parts.
I mean, can you go wrong? Like,
Yeah, skip critical parts.
yeah, exactly. Like, part of the part of what's tough about making a movie is taking a 90-hour narrative and trimming it down to just the hour and a half that will truly tell the story.
But that's what makes the fucking Marvel franchise so good, because they don't condense the 90-hour story. They just have
Well, but
30 movies.
they've done a version of it. They have broken it down into
well.
Yeah.
I think that
23 90-minute stories.
I think even they're cutting corners now. Like, this is something, I'll die on this hill. The most important thing in Bruce Banner's entire
Yeah.
storyline of all times to finally come to peace with the Hulk happened off screen.
Yeah.
The most important thing to ever happen to him through any storyline. Because they're almost always grim endings for the Hulk.
Yeah. No, that's very true. That's very true.
Yeah. But yeah, this is a magic podcast.
Yeah, Magic the Gathering.
I'm sure it's just a little bit until we get a Forgotten Realms or whatever, where we have Avengers and Magic.
Yeah. Well, but anyway, the aggro decks, they keep the control decks honest by not letting them do a Snyder cut.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
If you've got 40 turns to just draw all of your cards and get 1 billion mana and get Teferi in 3 different versions and Narset and all this other stuff, then yeah, of course you've got meaningful decisions. But that's why Mono Red is here, is to make sure that if you don't do something in the first 4 turns, you don't play Magic.
But Bastion, combo makes me feel bad. I don't want to watch them play Magic.
Well, that's the tough part of option number 4. Rock. Mid-range is kind of option number 3.
Yeah.
Option number 4, the combo is...
Most people say their mid-range is an aggro deck, though, and it's a lot more grindy, and it's not true to call it aggro.
That's true. I think probably a lot more decks get called aggro just because they have a lot of creatures.
Yeah.
And it's... yeah.
Creatures are just spells that stay around.
Mm-hmm.
Anymore, they all ETB do a thing. What's the difference between that and a spell?
Well, I mean, we learned in the early part of it, this is still so ingrained in me. The whole dies to removal thing, I know that's like a meme,
Mm-hmm.
but like, if you played through Revised Ed, I mean, obviously if you played in Alpha and Beta, but I didn't play then, but Revised Ed, for like a decade after that, dies to removal is just so damned true because the creatures just could not hang.
Right.
And that was the thing, and nobody played creatures in Constructed. Like, you were a child and you played my Thalid deck, and you just kept putting counters on your stuff because no one in my playgroup was old enough or intelligent enough to just play a single copy of Wrath of God and just win every game.
I think when Phyrexia was still in standard, the dice removal thing was changed around where it just doesn't die to dismember. It does.
Well, I mean, that's what people call it the bolt test.
Yeah. Well, they've gone through a lot of different experiments over the course of time. The bolt test, getting rid of bolt in any kind of standard or extended formats, bringing bolt back. Right now, it's stuff like comes into play and has an ability. Evoke was a big one. Yeah. You could play your evoke creatures, and you actually had a sorcery that could be a creature once you had finally run your opponent out of all their removal spells.
Yeah.
So, I mean, creatures now are so much more powerful than I ever remember them being.
Yeah.
So aggro is kind of a different story. It's a little bit of a different beast. I mean, it used to really be like your aggro deck is just, you are running into Wrath of God. It's either coming on turn 4 or turn 5. You don't know which one. You better fucking win.
Like, we even have aggressive dorks. Like the Exalted dorks. Noble and Ignoble Hierarchs. So all 8 of your Land of War elves make your one guy you're attacking with a fucking beast.
That's so awesome. Hey, right. What color is Ignoble Hierarch?
Green, and it taps for gem. Yeah. Yeah. And they all go in the same color deck that Hex Drinker does.
Wow.
And Hex Drinker with protection from everything can still get that +8 from Exalted.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Or not, but both at the same time.
Yeah.
When playing it, it's awesome. When playing against it, it's awful.
Yeah. Well, that's the definition of a combo deck. Combo I find to be a weird archetype because
it exists in the in-between.
You want to talk about Magic as Richard Garfield intended. I mean, there's 8 different first turn win combos in Alpha because who's going to put them together? You're not going to build your deck for that because you're not going to own enough cards to ever do that. So fuck it, put that in there. That's the joy of the game. Is maybe you just.
For the people who don't know, the first 4 sets there was no deck limit. Relentless Rats was an homage to Ichor Rats? No, what was the original one?
Plague Rats.
Plague Rats that got bigger for each other rat and plague.
Yep.
There was not a limit you had, and so they wanted to bring that back.
Plague Rats was my biggest fear when originally buying Magic the Gathering. My mom and I, when I was a child, imagine just this, but without the beard. And my mom would take that to Chi-Chi's, when Chi-Chi's still existed, and feed it seafood chimichangas with 2 corn cakes. But anyway, she would also take me to the Game Preserve, which was the premier board game store in Indianapolis. And I bought my first starter box of Revised. And I sat there at Chi-Chi's, and I drank a non-alcoholic daiquiri, and I ate my seafood chimichanga, and I had to go through every single card with my mom and show them to her so that she would know that I would not turn to Satan if I played the game. I did play the game, and I did turn to Satan, but it was many years later. But Plague Rats was the one I was terrified of because it was these nasty, scabrous rats, and they had just, in Revised Edition, they got rid of the pentagram in Unholy Strength.
Right.
Yeah. If that had been a pack of Unlimited, little Bash would have been kicked out of the game. Mom would have burned the cards right there in front of him at Chi-Chi's.
That's funny.
Yep.
So what's the rarest card you ever pulled by today's standards?
I mean, original dual lands.
No Ancestral? I heard it was a common.
No, I never, to my knowledge, I never actually owned any. Well, no, the Power 9 were gone from Revised.
Oh, that's right.
There was a minute when Magic packs were undervalued. And I had just become an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started buying and opening packs of Antiquities, The Dark, Legends. I don't think I got a hold of an unlimited. That was just a joyful time. It was just shit in every single pack.
Right.
I mean, it was just the perfect example of like why you shouldn't open these packs if you buy them. But man, it was.
I bought 2 vintage packs. Well, 5. I bought a revised pack and I opened it. My rare was Tim. So that was a big feel bad. $300 for Tim.
Yeah.
But that pack's already gone up in value if I would have kept it sealed.
Right.
So, prime example.
Yeah. Keep them sealed.
Then I spent $200 on, I think it's Urza Saga or Legacy. Which one's the one that Grand Monolith comes in? Legacy?
I don't know.
Well, anyway, bought 5 packs from that for $200 total, which is decent. Pack number 1, I got a memory jar, which is now
Legacy.
$80. Hers is Legacy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is fantastic artwork.
Right, but when I cracked it, it was $15. I was like, neat. And 6 months later, it had like quadrupled in value.
Oh.
But and then the second pack, I got Grim Monolith, which was $200 at the time. Pack fresh, and it was a cool moment for me because like I kind of like went out on a limb to spend $200 on packs just for content, right? So
Yeah.
that was a break even, and I was like, I could keep the rest of these packs sealed and just sell them. But this was from an unmapped box, so they didn't scale it to keep the foils. So there was still the chance for a good foil, because foils from that set, even bad ones, are like $5-10. I got a foil and it wasn't a good one, but it was still fun, especially after playing on house money, right?
Yeah.
I'm already broke even. I'm positive what the erg is like with the memory jar. That looks thick.
This
That looks thick.
is thick. I don't want to cut you off.
No. Go ahead.
So, this one is also by 450 North from Columbus, Indiana. This one's called Black Cat's Slushy XXL. It is a smoothie-style beer with blackberry, pineapple, and banana.
Whew.
So what they do, this is what I was saying about the other half of their thing. In addition to these incredible IPAs, they just brew all this basic Berliner Weiss and then puree a bunch of fruit or occasionally graham crackers, ice cream, cake, whatever the heck, pink peach rings, etc. And then they ferment that in the beer. So, yeah. See how this goes.
Yeah, that's good.
That is. Yeah, that is. Really good banana. These things are hit or miss. I won't lie. Some of these slushies, they had one that was blackberry. And it just about one of the best beverages I've ever had.
See, I like blackberry.
They've had some others.
But eating it, it's always got them seeds in it. They get stuck in my teeth real bad.
Maybe you'd like the slushy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Others of them, pretty damn weird. So aggro on autopilot is, my thought is, it's unfair to say that, but it's not without reason.
Right.
That being, if you're playing a red deck, you have, by nature, in the first 3 turns, more math problems than any other deck.
Yes.
Those math problems are not the hardest to memorize. I mean, if you've played a red deck, if you just pick one up, you're not going to do as well as you will after you've played it.
Right.
It just simply, there's too much math. Once you have played it a few times, because they are math problems, they're easier to memorize.
Well, and the number one problem I see new people have with aggro decks is this lightning bolt will only deal 3 damage to them, and they've got 20 life. But it'll kill this 2/2. Right, but look at the totality of damage in your hand, and they've got a 10-turn timer versus my 4-turn timer. And a lot of people, they'll spread the resources out incorrectly.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about it is, like, you can tell. You get on the arena ladder, and you can tell when you're playing someone who thinks that their red deck is autopilot. I had that just recently. I was so thankful. It was like I think I was still playing that Angel Tribal deck, and I threw down some creature, and my opponent burnt my face for enough damage to hit the creature, and it was just like, thank God. And he probably shot me in the face for 21 damage, and I gained more than 2 life, which is all I would have needed to win because he burnt all of his fucking spells on my face.
Yeah.
I gained the 2 life, and then I just won the game handily because again, he thought it was autopilot. He thought that it was I just smoked the opponent and I'm done.
Do I hit my opponent for 5, or do I nuke this 3/4 in the way of my little dudes?
Right.
Probably nuking the 3/4.
Exactly. Because the little dudes will... Again, it's a math problem.
Yep.
It is a real problem. It's a decision that has to be made. It's unfair to say that it's autopilot because you do have to realize the obvious choice of if you can deal 5 damage to your opponent, that's a lot of damage. That's a quarter of their life total.
Although there is a meme going on right now. It's like, deal 20 damage at once, or 1 damage each turn. Follow me for more passive damage tips.
Oh my god. But, yeah, it sure feels tempting. It sure feels like that's the way to win. But if you actually math it out, almost every burn spell, I haven't gone through every single one in the game. If you have some weird exception, fuck off. Almost every burn spell is going to be better spent clearing out the way so you can get in that repeated damage. And then even that repeated damage, if you've got, it might be easy enough if you have like 2 haste creatures and 1 non-haste creature. What's the fastest way to get all the excess damage in? You play the non-haste creature and then you play the 2 haste creatures on turn 2. Again, it is decisions. The first time you play, you have to do that math. Until you've memorized it, you have to do that math. After that, it does become more.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I think the reason why maybe it does take that shit, though, and so I can't say it's entirely unfair to call it autopilot, is the first time after playing a bunch of aggro, probably most people, I think, if you get into Magic and you intend to do well, you're going to start off in aggro, and then you'll kind of grow from there. The first time you sit down with a pure control deck, and you're looking at your hand, and there's like 8 creature, 2 counter spells, 2 card draw spells. That's a fucking decision, and that's not a math problem.
Yeah.
That you can't figure that out by just adding up.
Yeah. Well,
One
they're in
haste,
these
2
colors.
without.
What is the biggest threat? Is it worth it to not counter that?
Right.
Blah, 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 blah. You want to know what has always reaffirmed the myth that all aggro is autopilot? Is when my creature gets unsummoned 2 times in one game. I'm like, oh yeah, this is my only play, is to do it again. Herp to derp to derp.
I mean, I think a lot of the hate that, mono red or other aggro decks, but especially always mono red gets, comes from salt. Just the salt of blue players. I'm playing an intelligent deck. I'm making decisions. I'm doing this stuff. I've got 90 answers to your deck, even though I've only got 30 spells in my deck. And you just won on turn 4 with your fucking Ember Cleave like an idiot.
Yep.
I think that's a factor.
Brock Lesnar technique.
Uh-huh.
Just hold you down.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, shit. That's it.
Yeah. Which is why we say that aggro keeps the control decks honest.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, great, you got a billion answers.
I'd say
if you can't play them and you can't play them quickly enough, then you don't have any answers at all.
I've always said that aggro keeps combo in check. Because combo's like, I'm going to dirtle around until I win.
Yeah.
Control keeps aggro in check because, like, go on, overextend, I'm going to wrath, and then whittle you down.
Right.
And then combo beats control because...
Well, it can. Plenty of control decks. I mean, if the control is running blue...
Right, but there's a lot of... Almost all combo decks these days are Storm.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't time your counterspell in the most beneficial time to do it...
True.
I'm just going to...
True. Timing...
Flusterstorm should be in Modern.
Hey.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
it is. It was Modern Horizons 1 box topper.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
And I think, including the one I have in Joyer, I have a playset of it.
There you go.
Let's talk about timing your counterspell. So, I love Magic Arena. Alright? When I think back on the days when I used to prepare for a Grand Prix or a Pro Tour qualifier, we're talking about 2 weeks. And every night of those 2 weeks, I would go to bed, and as I lay there, the way I would help myself sleep is I would count through every single card in my deck in the numbers and just rethink, is that exactly what I need? And I would conceptualize all of my sideboard cards. And it was tough because you didn't know about evolutions in the meta.
Right.
You know, you subscribe to Star City Games, you do what you could to, like, read in case some pro came up with something. But if some asshole had...
Came up with the nuts and not posted it online.
Yeah, came up with the nuts, or even just the one counter spell that fucks your combo, or the one Wrath card that no one else is running, and he's running, and you play him, that's it for your aggro deck. And so much conceptual thought went into it. Now, the huge advantage of Arena, like, my thumb is on the pulse. I can play Magic all day long against competitive players. You can also download, you can get on 17 lands, you can get on so many different sites, you can see exactly what's going on in the format all the time. One thing that I've noticed, though, is I remember it was in Memphis, and I took a Protean Hulk through the Breach combo deck. It must have been extended. And my combo, I had goldfished that deck. I knew exactly what my mulligan strategy was. I knew exactly what my strategy was. And with all of my sideboard cards, I knew exactly how the only 3 pieces of priority when my opponent could disrupt my deck, and I knew exactly what the answers were. Because I had so much time to play mental Magic to theoretically decide. Nowadays, I have the experience, but I was playing against Neoform combo. I had a shock, and they played their Seagate Stormcaller. And I didn't shock it with its thing on the stack. And its thing left the stack, and so then they just won the game instantly.
Right.
If I had played shock there, and what I noticed was, if I had been playing 2 weeks of mental Magic, preparing for each deck, okay, if I play against Neoform, what are the 2 pieces of priority where I can disrupt this, and how do I do it? I would have been prepared for that. And instead, I'm used to, oh, I'm playing professional Magic all day. Oh, yeah, all right, whatever. Okay, won that one, lost that. And it's a lot easier to just miss.
That makes sense.
Incredible deck tech, yeah. The trade-off.
Yes. But, like, it's harder to call the meta shifts these days. I think it makes aggro a little more valuable in that it's a safer bet. It's hard to stray away from, am I punching him in the face wrong? Right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a card from Modern Horizons 2 that just came out. I was actually talking to Corey about it on the way here. So Thraben Inspector is a popular card to play in the 1-drop for light because it's a 1-cast 1/2 investigate. So you get some late game payoff, you get a little artifact if that matters. That's a 1/2 for 1. It's hard to go wrong. Well, they kind of reprinted the card in blue, and nobody touches it. It's 1 blue, sorcery, create a 0/3 crab, and investigate. So you even have precedent for commonly played cards, and they're not making the cut now. I would say that the 0/3 is better. I mean, I guess White Weanie's aggro, being able to draw later, flicker, reoccur to value, but blue cares about instants and sorceries way more. So you could run that in your Delver deck and have a Thraben Investigator that's not even a creature, which seems like optimal. We got the Lich from the new Dungeons and Dragons set that's 1 less to cast for each spell you cast. So I could either play 4 hard blue pips, or I could pay 3 and play the crab, and still spend the 4 and get an extra body out of it. Yes, it's weird trying to read a format, trying to prepare for the Neo forums and all the little idiosyncrasies.
Right.
Because you never know what's going to be the best.
Yeah.
There are so many variations at this point. I think that's one reason everybody likes Thoughtseize, because you're like, well, that's this version of the deck, I guess. We'll get rid of that and hope you don't draw it.
Even then, it makes playing Thoughtseize a little intimidating. You look at an opponent's hand, and if you don't recognize the deck and you don't see what they're going for,
right?
It's just like, how long do you want to spend on turn 1 just reading every card?
Yep.
Reading every card. This one plus that's not a combo. This one plus that doesn't win the game. Okay, I'll get rid of the most powerful one, then the next turn they're like, destroy you!
I'm less patient online, though. Like, in person, I'd write the titles out.
Yeah.
Online, I don't need to do that. Let's go.
Yep.
Yes, and don't really need to since on Arena, they're just shows you at all times.
That's fair. There is a little bit of... They definitely lighten the memory load.
Yeah.
And that's really good for newer players.
And I think
so much
does that too.
Huh?
I think Midgo does something like that too.
Well, that trims down a lot of the work, which... I mean... on the whole is valuable. It makes it so. We had talked a while back about best of 1 and best of 3 on the ladder, and the more that I've thought about that, the more I agree with what you said. Essentially, so best of 1, if you win, you get a point. If you lose a point. Best of 3, if you win 2 and lose 1, you get 2 points. But if you lose 2, even if you win 1, you lose 2 points. In other words, if you're playing the ladder, so time is of the essence, because you got to get a lot of fucking wins if you want to qualify for the Mythic qualifier. It's better to play best of 1. Not only is it better to play best of 1, but it's also better to just not really play Magic if it's going to be hard. If you are a good enough player and your deck has a high enough win rate, it's worth it to just forfeit every time you're in a bad board state, move on to the next game, get your 3 wins in a row, and keep progressing. And I think that does... The more that I think about it, that really does trim a lot out of the game. It makes it a lot more about speed. It de-emphasizes, learning the format and really learning the tricks, figuring out, okay, you shock the Seagate Stormcaller.
Right before Neoform.
Right before Neoform, they don't have something to sacrifice to the Neoform. That's what it was. If he had a second creature, he could have sacrificed that to Neoform, but all he had was the Seagate Caller. And by failing to shock that... But then it's also like... Had this moment not stuck in my head for other reasons, I wouldn't have even memorized that.
Right.
I would just continue to lose every time somebody plays a Seagate Stormcaller, because why the fuck not? I'm not trying to play Magic. I'm just trying to, like,
Right.
get as many games in as I can because my win rate is better than 60%.
It's you're no longer playing Magic. You're just playing the odds.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Magic's a little side game you get to play and get your dopamine kick whenever you're.
Mm-hmm.
Goes back to people don't want to feel bad playing Magic.
Yeah. And I think that's... I mean, that makes sense. Do you want to feel bad at anything? Is there ever a time you want to just be like, oh, I probably suck?
People watch sad movies just to cry.
Yeah, but it also, at the end of Infinity War, you're like, hey, you know what? I'm kind of glad I've got my loved ones.
Well, right, and I get that, but like, I don't know. It's fun. Scary movies are fun to be scared and to get scared because you know you're safe. Magic is fun because I don't know I'll win. Like, if I'm just face rolling Corey and you every time we play, well, that's just Kelly wins. That's not Magic.
Right.
I love all of Magic. I have decks for every strategy, and it's not because there's only certain ways I like to play it. No, I like everything's a viable win con. I will beat you with whatever tools you think I can't.
Yeah.
Most of my even my combo decks win through commander damage. Because nobody thinks that your mono blue deck's going to beat them with commander damage, especially when she's a 1/3. But then I do it, and people feel bad.
Well, I have noticed though. My preference is to play control decks. Like that's what I like to play. I feel like that challenges me, that stays interesting, etc. I have found that the times that I've gotten serious about the ladder, the times that I have like qualified for Mythic or whatever, is always because I find a like teenage addictive aggro or aggro-ish deck. I find the Rogues deck from Standard right after Zendikar came out. And the reason I keep playing is because every time am I gonna get like 3 Ruin Crabs? Am I gonna get 3 Thieves Guild Enforcers? You know? Or I get on this Angel deck and it's just like, am I gonna get Soul Warden into Bishop of Wings into Righteous Valkyrie? And it's like what keeps me playing enough games in order to actually qualify for Mythic is the addictive element. It's not the fact that it's a great game and I just enjoy playing these control decks, because that won't get you enough games fast enough in order to qualify. The things that get me going is just like, hey, if you flip 3 heads in a row, then you can win.
Right.
Oh, okay. I'll keep flipping.
So, you kind of... We've been talking about aggro decks, lack of decisions. Doesn't make it easier or better. ADHD kicked in. I forgot. We haven't talked about this card on the podcast. Grim Wanderer. Colorless black, creature goblin warlock. 5/3. Flash. Tragic backstory. Cast this spell only if your creature died this turn. So it's a 2-cast 5/3 with flash. Yeah, so now, I think in the mirror, if you're doing an aggro versus aggro,
Yeah.
the chump block becomes the...
Yeah. Oh my god.
And it's not, he can't block. Like, it's just a 5/3 for 2.
That's coming out in the new standard set.
Yeah, and it says goblin on it.
Playing mono black. Wow.
Yep.
So the chump block could just, if it's a 5/3, if you swing in because your opponent is sitting on nothing, you could suddenly be on a 4-turn clock.
Yeah.
Woo! That's cool.
Yeah, it is.
Dies to removal.
so does that game. Fails the bolt test. Card's bad. If they have one of the 80,000 cards printed in Magic's history, it'll
Cards bam.
it'll just become a basic lands bastion.
I mean, that is a big, powerful dude.
It is.
Well, all right. In the chump block scenario, I feel like that's a huge card because if their strategy is such that they're swinging on turn 2, and you're chump blocking and dying on turn 2, then probably a 5/3 would really fuck up their day.
Yeah.
If you're going to play that card, I would assume you're also going to have some creatures that sack themselves.
Or maybe a dungeon that makes each player sack a creature.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to have some way to get it in the graveyard. That 5/3 against a control deck, I think, would be terrible. It would be like if they printed Tarmogoyf in Standard. It'd be like, oh, there's a great big guy. Here's a removal spell.
What's even more hilarious against a control deck because it's like, okay, turn 4 or turn 3 Doomscar.
Yeah.
Okay, it's 5/3.
Oh, it has flash. Okay. All right. That's good. That's good. So presumably, if you had 2 of them in your hand, you play your Mog Fanatic and sack it, throw the second guy down, they Doomscar it, you throw another one down. It's better. I would play the Skyclave asshole over it, because no matter how many removal spells they've got for my Skyclave buddy,
Path.
Well,
Dies the removal.
Okay.
Fuck off.
If I'm playing in a format with exile, there's a lot of exile effects.
Yeah, but it's Bloodghast.
Hey, we wanted to talk about rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah.
So rock, paper, scissors. All right, the best games. All games are rock, paper, scissors.
Right.
The best games are it's just like 3 different rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah.
In place. And I feel like that's a new one that they've discovered in Magic is worthwhile creature dies exile. Where you kind of have this, you got creatures who we're starting to see more thing. Are we? What happens with exile? Is that rock, paper, scissors? You have death and leaves play and all those, or it never says leaves play, it says dies. Most creatures, there's a couple that leave play.
Right. So
and is exile
it's the most removed from game except for the card AWOL. Which is, it's not even removed from game, it's not even in that zone. It's a silver border card.
Oh, okay.
But the exile is the hardest graveyard to play out of. Graveyard is everybody's second hand. That's why Endurance, the new green mythic evoke guy, is really good, because I don't care if you're doing Uro. Before you cast them, I'll evoke them and shuffle your graveyard. I hope we don't continue to see cards that pull out of exile. I love that Karn lets me get exiled artifacts. You should not let me get exiled artifacts.
Exile, I feel like exile comes with an inherent fear of a power creep there, though.
Right. So
where it's just like, if we get too much graveyard interaction, and so dies, destroys, kill, all those things stop meaning as much, and then we just have exile. And so the new Wrath of God's just going to be exile everything, and everything else exile shit.
And then it'll be put target creature in the command zone.
Right. And then we have the hexproof problem all over again. People say, well, exile's just not interactive enough, and there's 60 cards that in every format that exile, so now we need to come back from exile. And now it's just... Though, that does put it back into this kind of rock, paper, scissors cycle where...
Well, if they're expecting to play out of exile, then I'll just do stuff that kills.
If Wrath of God is popular, then you start playing your comes back from the graveyard cards, and if all your comes back from the graveyard cards are in play, your opponent plays Exile of God.
Right.
Until you start playing your comes back from exile cards.
Right. Well, and there's a few. Corey, was it you telling me it's infinite turns with the new red-white artificer mixed tokens. So you put pull from eternity on Isocon Scepter, and then you, with his ability, you pay 5, tap, exile Ugin's Nexus, make 2 token copies, 1 dies legendary rule, you pay 1, sack it, take an extra turn. Pay 2, pull from eternity, put it back in your graveyard.
I don't remember.
So, there is a very shitty card from Kamigawa block that says target player puts a remove from card game into the graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
That effect already has infinite turns. Just putting it in there, like, hey, you get to flash this back again. Hey, you get to do whatever. In this specific example, it's Ugin's Nexus, 5 colorless. Players can't take an extra turn. If they would, they skip it.
Mm.
If it would go from play to the graveyard, instead of exile, take an extra turn.
Mm.
So, you exile it to make, with this guy's ability to make 2 token copies of it. So, one will die. It'll say you take an extra turn because if it gets exiled. The other one in play will say skip it.
Mm.
But the guy that made the tokens has pay 1, sack an artifact. So then you sack the second one. Now you get an extra turn.
Wow.
Pull from eternity, put it back. And this is a Boros combo, which is objectively the weakest combination in Commander. And pull from eternity is already doing dumb shit with that.
Wow.
So if you were to... that is just put it back in the graveyard. If we get more of that, it's worse.
No. I mean, everything that interacts with any ability weakens that ability.
Yeah. Now, the reason that Pull from Eternity was originally created is it was a... I don't think it was Kamigawa. I think it was Future Sight.
Maybe.
That sounds like a Future Sight.
That and Rift Sweeper was to get rid of your suspend cards.
Right.
Now, I fully agree with don't introduce a new mechanic without answers. We saw what was wrong with that with energy.
Mm-hmm.
But you can... Void Mirror is the perfect example on how they should have done it. Versus Pull from Eternity or Rift Sweeper. Speaking.
Energy taught me an interesting lesson. Trust what they're putting out. I remember when I first encountered energy, and it was just like, what? Did you not realize how complex this game is? Like, we're dealing with cards in hand, cards in library, cards we're drawing, creatures in play, lands in play, mana costs, like, cards in graveyard and the combination of cards in graveyard, and now you also want me to just, for no reason, for one set and only one set, also keep track of how much energy I have? Like, Jesus Christ! Have you ever played Magic? Did you not notice this is already, like, but anyway, I have played with it some, and it's pretty simple. It's largely a non-event unless somebody has a combo deck.
Right.
And anyway, what it has done, I had a similar, initial reaction to the dungeons, where it was kind of like, and I'm sure a lot of people have had this, where it's like, wait a minute, we're getting this whole new thing, and it's like multiple steps, and it's kind of complex, but it's removed from the... Is this the kind of complexity you want to add? Is just like, oh, also there's a side game. But from energy, I've learned, just give it, if those are your fears, just relax. See how it goes, because they know what they're doing.
So it's funny that energy is what makes you trust what they make. One, that was originally a mirrored-in mechanic that got shelved. Two, when they printed it, they did not put any interaction in place. It was an undisruptible resource.
Mm.
And then they also extended the pool for what Standard had. When it was built with Aetherworks Marvel not being able to touch Eldrazi, Then they added Eldrazi back into the standard pool. So there were all sorts of combo decks that just generated a shitload of energy and either turned them into Thopters or Emrakuls. And both can kill you. One kills you a little better. But, so it's funny to me that that's what reassured you.
So they actually did fuck it all up with energy. I just happened to encounter energy through the Kaladesh Remastered.
Yeah, you did it in the fair way, the organic way.
That's funny. That's funny. That is interesting.
Yeah.
That's all because, they had past sets and Shadows and maybe another one for extra year or two.
Yeah.
Standard.
Yeah. They were tweaking how they structured it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And then they realized they done goofed people that your cards were rotating too quick. I just gotta play it. And they're like, okay, we undid it. That cat didn't go back in the bag.
Yeah. Oops. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something else I was gonna say, but I think I lost it. It's gonna be a doozy too. Oh well.
Is it gonna be a big bam moment?
Big bam!
Big Degeneration X.
Is that a wrestling shirt, Corey?
Yeah, it is.
Corey's
I was
wearing
about
a
to say
wrestling
that.
shirt.
Like, kind of funny he says it when I'm wearing a wrestling shirt.
Yeah.
We'll have a picture of Corey in his wrestling shirt. And now a picture of Corey without his wrestling shirt.
And now a picture of Corey's OnlyFans QR code.
No.
But it's just ceiling fans.
Only fans. Only Corey. So, hey, this is not related to Magic, but this is kind of interesting. I heard, I follow this guy who talks a lot about, like, hardcore music of any sort, and someone was asking him about OnlyFans for their band. And I have no idea if this guy was talking out of his ass or not, but what he said was, I see that as a monetization platform, not as an advertising platform, and it sounds like, I guess, OnlyFans is kind of moving beyond its pornography roots.
Not of their own volition, but it's basically Patreon for, you don't have to do packages. You can do more.
Just
So if you're like
pay-per-view kind of,
Yeah.
here's our concert.
you can do that. You can do, hey, let's say you've got a breakdown in your metal band, and like the high pitched squeals like somebody's name, like it's a breakup song or something.
Okay.
Maybe you could do one where we do the breakdown, but we'll say whoever's name you want.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because you can do custom, like, videos. Like, I can just DM you a video and be like, hey, you got a request? I'll do some voiceover or whatever. What's that? There's an app where you can pay actors to
Cameo.
So you can almost do a cameo element into your Patreon setup. So you can have... There's only one subscription you could do. Mind you, I do marketing as a side gig. I've helped somebody set up their OnlyFans, and it was not for comedy. But so I learned a lot. You want to do 2 different platforms. You want to do a free one and a non. And then that's how you would structure your Patreon multiple tiers. So I've got this one, it's free. I'll give you teasers. This one is not free. It's like mid-range. But I'll post some lewds in this case. And the higher tier was where you make the $1 million in a month. That kind of category. It's super Patreon. You don't need Discord to interact with your followers. I've wanted to do one, but it's so ingrained in the sex work culture, which nothing wrong with sex work. The reason why they're moving away from it is because the people that do their card transactions says, hey, you have to stop doing it in this amount of time, or we won't support you.
Wait, which site says that?
So the people that process their card transactions.
So like PayPal?
Right. It's not PayPal, but basically.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing was a trap and Kelly fell into it. You heard it here first. OnlyKelly.com. /Squire Games. Be sure to buy your magic cards and penis pics from Kelly himself. And
Cold a lot.
you've been a great audience this week.
Yeah, that's it from let's just go ahead and get out of here. I took an awkward turn.
iScoop.